What a week. Three big announcements, all happening within a 24-hour time period that included receiving breakthrough status from the FDA regarding your lead research trial, CYB003 for major depressive disorder, and then later outlining a positive end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA for, again, your lead research trial, followed up with an oversubscribed private placement of $150 million. So a really good week, to say the least. So first up, explain to our audience into detail what breakthrough status means and a positive end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA means and what it entailed. Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade to Black podcast. As today we're talking psychedelics, and what a week it's been for psychedelic leader in this space, Cybin, as we welcome back the CEO of Cybin, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol CYBN. Doug Drysdale, good to see you. And what a week this has been. A long time coming, but I feel like I always say this in our beginning of our podcast, but a lot of work been done. I know it's a long time coming, but finally everything comes to fruition. But this is a significant announcement for the company this week.
Yeah, you know what, and it shouldn't be underestimated. I know we've seen, a number of similar kind of programs seeing this kind of progress, but these are not common things when you look across the biotech sector. These are all major achievements, and for a brand new company to come from inception and bring forward a breakthrough therapy drug within 3 or 4 years is pretty remarkable. So kudos to the team; they've done a fantastic job.
That can't be underestimated. In only 3 to 4 years, when you put it in, that's incredible. Something like this, normally, when you look at historically in the past, what do you look at as far as a timeline?
Oh, we'd be looking at 10 years typically. Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah. So this is about a benefit of working with molecules that have been around for a long time, right? We had a great starting point, a great body of knowledge, and we were able to build off of that, and that's really helped us accelerate things.
Yeah, that's great. Well, as I said off the top, what a week. Three big announcements, all happening within a 24-hour time period that included receiving breakthrough status from the FDA regarding your lead research trial, CYB003 for major depressive disorder, and then later outlining a positive end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA for, again, your lead research trial, followed up with an oversubscribed private placement of $150 million. So a really good week, to say the least. So first up, explain to our audience into detail what breakthrough status means and a positive end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA means and what it entailed.
Yeah, so breakthrough status is actually something that's pretty rare. It's quite difficult to get. And the criteria are that the indication has to be life-threatening. You have to produce preliminary clinical data, and the treatment has to be safe and more effective than currently approved drugs. So it meets all of these criteria. Really, I think there's 2 things that you're really getting from breakthrough therapy designation. One is collaboration with the FDA. So typically when you submit a phase 3 plan, FDA will sign off on it being safe for patients and ethical. They won't tell you if you've designed your studies right, or you've got the right endpoints that they will approve, or any other guidance towards the approval process. Breakthrough therapy designation changes that. It's a collaborative process, and the phase 3 design is created in collaboration with FDA, with their sign-off on it. So you're de-risking entirely the design of the phase 3 program. The second thing it brings is speed. And so rolling review, that means we can submit data as we go and not have to wait for milestones along the way. Expedited review, priority review, which typically means, along with accelerated approval, about a 6-month approval timeline instead of maybe 10 to 12. And to put that in the context, yeah, I mean, think about that. Think about saving, even if BTD only saves us 6 months, and it might well save us more than that.
Still.
6 months, though, when you think about patent life, our patents go out to 2041 or so. But every month that goes by, that patent life is ticking away, right? So we're in a hurry to get to market. Many of these antidepressant drugs have peak sales of $3 to $4 billion.
right?
So 6 months could be $2 billion. BTD could be worth $2 billion to us. That's the way I think about it. Anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a smart way of looking at it too. But then you also think about your burn rate as well, what saving 6 months would does, right?
Of course, absolutely. And that's much smaller numbers, but more important right now, right? It's just obviously speed is the most important thing. The end of phase 2 meeting, I couldn't be happier with it, really. So we had an in-person end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA in DC. They've started doing these again now after COVID. We had more than 20 people from the FDA show up for the meeting, which is quite unusual across many departments. There seems to be a lot of interest in psychedelics and learning about them and understanding, how we bring these, through the approval process.
Yeah.
And it was a very collaborative discussion. We presented our phase 3 design. We presented our longevity data. Had quite unusually a very frank and open conversation with them. Typically I've seen these before where the responses are often obscure or they're tangential, or they're,
I know.
not direct. But yeah, we got really good, clear guidance from them on a few things in the study, which actually ended up making the studies more efficient than we had initially planned. So really good outcome from that.
It's I will say, when you look at yourself, a few other players, within the space and the amount of positive data that continues to come out, I'd be curious to see, and I know it's been a few months since you and I connected, but you talk about more and more people coming around and talking about the industry, and we've talked about biotech analysts and some of the feedback that they received. Since we've last spoken, do you see more of an increase in interest that people are asking more and more questions pertaining to the overall industry in your company specifically?
Oh, I've seen it across the board. So I've seen an
Have
increase.
you?
Yeah, I've seen a big increase in interest from pharma. They're really taking these seriously now because we're getting some meaningful data.
I bet.
We've seen a greater acknowledgement from the psychiatric community that these molecules work. So there's not really any more doubt amongst that
Yeah.
community in general. And look, we've seen the last 3 large financing deals done in this sector have had some of the most impressive biotech funds leading them. And, I can tell you from the group of investors that are coming into, the cap table now for us, any biotech company would be proud and humbled to have those in their cap table. These guys are very smart. They do their homework, they do their due diligence, they're very thorough. So I think that's obviously very good for us. I think that's really good for retail investors too, to know that the company's
100%.
been picked over
Yeah.
by those companies. Right?
What do you think convinced them to oversubscribe in this private placement when looking when we look at your portfolio, was there one or two things that stood out to them most? And I think it probably has to do with your leading research trial, I would think, correct?
It's the data. The data is just overwhelmingly positive. To be able to produce a 22-point reduction from baseline in MADRS score and sustain it through 4.5 months from just one cycle of treatment is pretty remarkable. There's nothing else out there like that. And typically, things that work quickly in depression right now, like ketamine or esketamine, the benefits just don't last very long. It's a few days and you're back in and having another dose. So imagine if you could just have one cycle of treatment, which is 2 doses of CYB3 every 6 months. The 4.5 month data we have is just 6 weeks away from the 6 month point, and it's not going anywhere. It's a flat line. It's not regressing at all. So I think that has surprised all of us, just how robust that line is.
So as you step into a phase 3, timeline as to when that would begin, and what's the biggest difference that will be conducted and executed in a phase 3 in comparison to a phase 2?
Yeah, it's mostly just scale. So the first phase 3 study will kick off around mid-year. The design is very similar to our phase 2. So what you're trying to do with that study is just replicate the data again on a larger scale. So that'll be 220 patients. The second study, which will start a few months after that, is 330 patients, has a slightly different design in that there's 2 doses, 2 different dose levels of CYB3 in that study. Our active high dose, which is 16 milligrams, and then a mid dose of 8 milligrams, which is designed to give the patients in that arm some kind of sensation or experience so they know they've got an active. It's all about dealing with the functional unblinding that happens in these studies. So that's really a dose-ranging type study for FDA's requirements. But they're essentially both the same in that you're just trying to replicate what we did in the phase
Yep.
2 on a larger scale and also expand the safety because we'll have 550 patients exposed overall, and that's important for the safety database.
Now, as far as expenses when it comes to drug development, like research, sites and stuff like that, will this be set up across the U.S.? Is this across, multiple continents? Like, where exactly will it be taking place?
Yeah, so we've had our CRO on board for quite a while. Worldwide
Yeah.
Clinical Trials, a global CRO. They're phenomenal. I have to say the team there is outstanding. And we've got 15 sites selected, targeted.
Okay.
Now in the US, we've been working with many of them for quite some time. These are all importantly for us, and this is our criteria. All of the sites are experienced sites with psychedelic trials. Many of them have worked with the COMP360 trials, for example. So they're
Right.
trained, they're DEA licensed. So we're not starting from scratch with brand new sites, which takes a lot longer. So we can
Of course.
streamline behind, the other studies.
But more importantly, making sure they're done right, correct? And
Yeah,
I think that is
exactly.
always a big question that people want to make sure, especially if this is new medicine. But if you want to emulate and obviously copy basically what you've created in phase 2, I think that's what's going to be most important, especially as you're scaling up.
Yeah, like I mean, we talked about speed being important, but it's not more important than quality in these studies. They absolutely have to be run right and robustly. One of the benefits of the way we're going about the study, though, is one, we're targeting MDD patients, not TRD.
Okay.
And treatment-resistant depression patients are a little more challenging, and there are fewer of them. So we're targeting a larger population. And we're also not asking those patients to come off their background medications, which can take 6 or 8 weeks, can be quite challenging. And frankly, just a lot of patients just won't want to do it because they might risk getting a placebo. So that I think will help speed up recruiting and keep it moving along.
Hmm. You know what I'm seeing more and more in this industry, and I'm learning a lot as well. And if you're learning, then obviously your audience is going to learn. But I just think that we really understand what this industry presents now with specific companies, but most importantly, pathway to revenue, everybody's individual stories. And if you can really understand that more, then you can really start to buy in and really start to see what the future of this company means. You have a long list of sophisticated investors, to say the least. When you look at where this company is today, like how is the word excited is I don't know what the proper term that you want to use, but you've come a long way. But now do you really start to see everything that you've been trying to basically put together is now like coming into fruition? It's coming into shape where people can really visualize and see where this could go.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I think the fact that the offering was just was very oversubscribed means we had a lot of investors just wanting to be in on it because, and I'll tell you why, it's because the penny has finally dropped, I think, around how
Yeah,
we commercialize these things. Finally, Spravato is getting some traction. We're
100%.
seeing very high growth rate from that asset. We see 3,500 centers across the US already, and by the time we come to market, there'll be many more that are
Yeah.
already trained. They're already experienced, and the experience in terms of the treatment session isn't much different, really. They're getting reimbursed for the consultation beforehand. They're getting reimbursed for the safety follow-up after, and they're getting reimbursed for the treatment sessions, and they're getting reimbursed for the drug. So the infrastructure and the reimbursement pathway all exists. And I think now that Spravato is really getting some revenue traction, investors are finally seeing a path. And it gives them confidence we are not going to have to build it from scratch. There's something
Yeah.
already there to build off of.
Yeah. Well, before this announcement this week, your cash levels included $39 million in cash or 28.9 at the end of its most recent fiscal quarter, along with the access to 121 million, which you previously reported. So we all know drug development, it can be expensive, but with these cash reserves strengthening this week, what would you say are the strategic priorities for utilizing these funds moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. This round was all about funding the phase 3 program and making sure we had an opportunity to get all the way through that to submission. I mean, that's the goal. So as I said, that'll kick off around mid-year. Very soon, though, we're also going to be starting a phase 2 study of CYB4, our deuterated DMT asset.
Yep.
in generalized anxiety disorder. And
That's a
that,
huge market. That's a
oh,
huge market.
I mean, all the anxiety disorders together are much bigger than the depression market, for sure.
General anxiety, like hell, I got anxiety right now. Right?
Yeah, I mean, anxiety disorders are 18 and 19% of the population, so it's huge.
That's
What
huge.
I'm excited about there with that asset is, first of all, a great outcome of the small pharma transaction is
Yep.
that we were able to leapfrog into an intramuscular formulation. So in phase one, we've been studying IV intravenous, but it's an IV infusion pump. So not an injection, it's a cannula in the arm, and you're pumping the drug into the patient over time. Psychiatrists don't have that in their offices, so we've been very focused on developing something more convenient. And small pharma had created data with intramuscular, which is just going to be like a flu shot, right? So we've all
Yep.
had plenty of
Yep.
those in the last few years. And we were able to leapfrog right to that for our phase two study. So instead of running
Yep.
another study in phase two with intravenous and then bridging to intramuscular, we can go straight into phase two with the formulation that we want to go to market with. It probably saved us
Yep.
9 to 12 months.
That's incredible.
So,
Well, I know from people that I spoke to in the industry, small pharma had some of the best IP in the overall industry. The challenge is that, like a lot of these startups, it's difficult, obviously, to raise money, and that's the bonus, obviously, that you guys had in the early days with obviously your previous experience and relationships, and obviously being an investable, being listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So you can understand that, yes, for those companies that had good IP, they probably would get bought out by some of the bigger companies, such as yourself. But then we look at this now. And I think people, as I said earlier, understand the pathway to revenue, especially when you have compelling data that comes out and how you're expediting everything, which leaves obviously people feeling very optimistic about the industry. I do want to outline, as you said, this was led by Deep Track Capital, $150 million, and includes RA Capital Management, Invidity Partners, Octagon Capital, and a number of other institutional investors. So, as you said before, these are some pretty sophisticated investment firms that have a big background in investing in biotech?
oh, they absolutely do, and this group has a fair amount of overlap with some of the other recent psychedelic transactions as well. So they've really been doing their work for quite a long time. I mean, this wasn't the first conversation we'd had with many of these folks. They've been
Okay.
watching and waiting for a while, waiting for the data to come through. And yeah, as I said before, I think retail investors should take some comfort from the fact that you've had a dozen or more very experienced biotech funds doing diligence on Cybin, and they've just invested $150 million. Yeah.
Yeah. Notable investor name Steve Cohen. Do you have ongoing conversations with Steve?
I don't personally, some of our team speaks with the portfolio managers there at Point 72, but obviously one of our biggest shareholders as well.
Yeah. Moving forward, then, I know I was going to ask some of the monumental moments that people should be paying attention to here in 2024. So, obviously, the phase three mid year, and that's obviously probably the most notable thing to be watching for. But once this gets started, again, as far as timeline, what can people then anticipate once the trial is up and underway? And when you plan to obviously have things completed, and what next steps will be pertaining to the actual trial itself?
Yeah, so the program will kick off around mid-year,
Yeah.
depending on recruiting. These are 18 to 24-month studies, so we're looking at that kind
Yeah.
of time frame. Two of them, maybe they're staggered 3 to 6 months apart, so that's the kind of rough time frame. Look, I think recruiting, we're expecting, and knock on wood, recruiting will be straightforward and simple like it was in the phase two, given the patient population. So we'll have some time before we have top-line data from that. But this year, before the end of the year, we're going to have phase two top-line data in generalized anxiety disorder. So to kind of put that into context, we're talking about a 90-minute experience from a single administration. So highly scalable. We know it's effective in depression and anxiety because we have proof of concept data with non-deuterated DMT in both of those scores. So we know it works. It's going to be highly scalable. It's going to be a simple administration. And it also has a phenomenal PK curve in that after injection, patients get up fairly quickly, a few minutes into that breakthrough kind of space. Then once they peak and come back down, they spend the rest of that 90 minutes in the tail of the experience where the psychological work happens. So, like, I'm excited because we've just seen the reaction to our data. We've just seen the reaction to MyMed's data. We're going to do this all over again in a few months' time with the second asset. And you know, that for me, to have two in the clinic really puts us in quite a differentiated position.
Does it become, I don't want to say easier, but as the FDA receives more and more data related to these trials from the overall industry, does it make it, I don't know what the raw proper term, but is it easier? Is it more, is it easier to work with the FDA when it comes to like a lot of the data and trials that are being conducted and the overall industry continues to like, perform really, really well with certain trials that are being executed?
Well, you know, the collaborative nature of the BTD designation makes working with the FDA easier. Setting up meetings with them is easier. But you can't take your eye off the ball when it comes to,
Of course.
quality of these studies and the robustness and integrity of the studies. There's no free pass when it comes to any of that.
No, I think the biggest thing is just like now that people are actually starting to take the industry serious. I think that's the first step, and I think we're past that now, which is great. And again, it all comes down to the data that you continue to announce. But what a week it's been, and if there's any indication as to how good it was, there's 150 million reasons why it was a good week for you because you got some pretty sophisticated investors that are involved in this, and I think most importantly for retail investors. They always want to hear a good story before the big money starts to come in. But drug development takes a long time, but if done the right way, it's high risk but high reward. But right now, I'm just so impressed with companies like yourselves and some of the data that continues to come out. It is life changing, which is great.
Like I agree. I mean, this is all exciting with the data and the financing, but the most important aspect of all of this is that we're now one step closer to bringing these treatments to patients. You know, all those patients out there that are having to deal with their depression every day. 40 million Americans. Then it's something that's one step closer to helping them.
The world needs that more than anything right now. When you put everything aside and you think about what you're trying to accomplish, like I said before, I think this could be the greatest invention of the 21st century when we look back.
I've said it before. I said I think this is the biggest breakthrough in psychiatry for the last 40 years. No question.
Yeah,
No question. We're literally on the precipice of a paradigm shift. And I know I've been saying that for a while, and a few others in the space have been saying it for a while. But now I think, the world is beginning to believe it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. Well, tell the team I say hi. Great to keep in touch. Congratulations on the great work. And as usual, please keep in touch. Okay, Doug?
Great. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me, as always. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. What's up, everyone? So what'd you think of the interview? Are there any more questions you want us to ask that you want to learn more of? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like button, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.